The movie starts with a scene where a woman is attacked by an elephant. Then, in 19th century Victorian London, a man named Dr. Friedrich Treves is strolling through a city carnival when he stumbles upon a peculiar show named Freak Show, featuring a man-transformed elephant creature managed by Mr. Beats. Dr. Treven, a surgeon at London Hospital, is intrigued and decides to visit this deformed human being, eager to meet him. While he is performing surgery on a patient, a young boy informs him that he has found the address of the Elephant Man. Curious to meet this transformed being, Dr. Treves hurries off to find the address. He encounters Mr. Bites, who claims to be the owner of the Elephant Man. Dr. Treves offers money to meet the man-transformed elephant. Just as Mr. Bites is about to unveil the creature's face, he reveals that this is the fate of a human whose mother was attacked by a herd of elephants, especially a wild male elephant, during her 4th month of pregnancy. It was a misguided claim due to lack of education. Nowadays, science does not support such beliefs. The Elephant Man actually suffers from a rare condition, and if that were the case, the fetus would have been lost in the 4th month of pregnancy.
If you enjoy our content, please support us by subscribing or liking, so we can recap more films for you.
Then, when Mr. Bites shows him to Dr. Treves, he is shocked and tears start flowing from his eyes in amazement. He then tells Mr. Bites, "Please bring him to the hospital for me tomorrow. I want to research about that disease," and give Mr. Bites some money to persuade him. In the next scene, a man brought in the Elephant Man by Mr. Bites' order. He, disguised with a cloth covering his face, walks in an unusual manner towards the hospital. Dr. Treves then takes his hand, leads him to her office, and asks him questions, expecting him to respond only by nodding, but the man just breathes heavily, moans softly, and doesn't speak a word. Later, his colleague enters the room, but Dr. Treves tells him, "Please don't tell anyone about this, so that I can present him at our doctors' assembly. It will be a surprise." When all the doctors were present at the assembly, he showcases the man, saying he suffers from a rare bone growth disorder and has an abnormal spinal column, making the right side of his body limp while his left hand is perfectly healthy. His body is covered in glandular swellings that have gradually taken over him, and his skull is several times larger than a normal human. In the next scene, we see Mr. Bites treating the Elephant Man very cruelly, constantly hitting him and causing him great suffering. Then Dr. Treves approaches him, notices his bad condition, and asks why he sleeps in a sitting position. Mr. Bites explains that it's because his skull is large, and if he sleeps lying down, he'll suffocate. Dr. Treves tells Bites that he needs to be taken to the hospital, a decision that Mr. Bites isn't too happy about it. Dr. Treves brings him to the hospital and places him in an isolation room. He then goes to the kitchen and asks the nurses to prepare nutritious food for him. He instructs a nurse to take the food to his patient in the isolation room. Meanwhile, the hospital director, Mr. Cargom, finds out and questions Dr. Treves about why he's keeping his patient in isolation. Dr. Treves explains that his patient is an exceptional case with an incurable condition, but Mr. Cargom insists that the hospital isn't a place for the untreatable and terminally ill. Suddenly, as the nurse sees the Elephant Man, she screams and drops the food on the floor out of fear. Dr. Treves, feeling sorry for not having informed her about the patient's condition, apologizes and tells the Elephant Man that he will bring him another food. In the next scene, a night shift porter who is aware of the situation enters the Elephant Man's room and says, "So it's you, eh?" He looks at the Elephant Man as a source of easy money and contemplates various cunning ways to profit from showcasing him. Later on, Dr. Treves tries to establish a connection with the Elephant Man in his room and realizes that although the man struggles to articulate words, he can communicate to a certain extent. Continuing, as Dr. Treves encounters Mr. Bites on the stairs and wants to take the Elephant Man with him, Mr. Bites insists on taking the man himself. Dr. Treves tells him that by exploiting the misery and suffering of a human being for his own gain, he won't allow him to take the man away. Mr. Bites threatened to sue him, and at that moment, the hospital director sides with Dr. Treves, saying that it's better to file a complaint to determine who's in the right. In the next scene, the hospital director tells Dr. Treves, "I intend to meet Mr. John Merrick tomorrow." To prepare Mr. Merrick for the meeting with the hospital director, Dr. Treves talks to him beforehand and tries to work out a suitable conversation. For instance, he suggests that when the hospital director arrives, Mr. Merrick should introduce himself by saying, "My name is John Merrick. Pleased to meet you." When Cargom goes to meet John Merrick, or the Elephant Man, he struggles to engage in conversation with the hospital director, which leads to the director feeling disappointed and considering leaving. He tells Dr. Trevis that Mr. Merrick might be better off finding a different place, but moments later, Dr. Trevis overhears him reciting a special prayer from the Bible, realizing he is far more eloquent than he appeared. Dr. Trevis informs Cargom about this revelation and returns to the room, surprised. In the following scene, Miss Kendall, a famous theater actress in London, reads an article in the newspaper about the Elephant Man. The article, actually a description by the London hospital director, portrays Mr. John Merrick as an uncouth individual who may initially frighten women or impatient individuals. However, he is depicted as a polite and intelligent person who appears very kind. This portrayal sparks Miss Kendall's interest in meeting Elephant Man. Simultaneously, the night shift hospital porter reads the article and tells everyone that he can show Mr. Merrick to them, implying that anyone offering a good amount of money could meet him. Dr. Trevis arranges a meeting for John Merrick to meet his wife. John Merrick becomes very emotional when he realizes that Dr. Trevis and his wife are genuinely warm towards him, treating him with respect and not mocking him. He cries after seeing their family photos and remarks that he can show a picture of his mother, which astonishes Dr. Trevis' wife upon seeing the beautiful woman in the photo. John Merrick comments that his mother would have liked him even with his condition, deeply affecting Dr. Trevis's wife. The situation tugs at the heartstrings of Dr. Trevis's wife, feeling deep sympathy for Mr. Merrick. In the next scene, Mrs. Kendall meets Mr. John Merrick and presents him with a framed photograph of herself as a gift, saying, "I only give my photo to special people I care about, and you are dear to me as well." She even gives him a novel, Romeo and Juliet, as a gift. Later, an article about Mrs. Kendall's meeting with Mr. John Merrick is published in the newspaper, causing the upper class and curious individuals to take notice and attend the meeting with Mr. John Merrick. John is polite with them and remarks, "People think I must be a terrible person based on my appearance, but it's not true." During an extraordinary meeting organized by the chief of the London hospital with the medical council members, when he intends to discuss the matter concerning Mr. Merrick, one of the members expresses disgust, saying he doesn't agree with keeping that animal and insists on sending him away as soon as possible. At that moment, Princess Alexandra from Wales arrives with a letter from Queen Victoria, thanking the hospital medical team for their spiritual support of Mr. John Merrick, and requesting their agreement to keep him in the hospital. Ultimately, with the announcement from the hospital chief regarding the government's willingness to cover expenses equivalent to a hospital bed, everyone agrees to keep Mr. John in the hospital. Dr. Trevis then brings a gift for John, including personal items such as a comb, toothbrush, and cologne. Following that, the silly and greedy night porter brings in a group of people, including Mr. Bites, who want to see John, into his room at night, and they start teasing and mocking him. This is ridiculous. How desperate must this hospital be that they allow anyone to come in whenever they please and torment this innocent man? They even bring a mirror to show his face to himself and scare the poor man. Another night porter witnesses these scenes. After everyone left, Mr. Bites goes to check on him. The next day, when Dr. Trevis comes to see him, there is no sign of Mr. Merrick in the room, and everything is in disarray. Dr. Trevis follows up on Merrick, and suddenly the janitor, who witnessed the incident, explains who is behind all this. Then, Doctor goes to that same unscrupulous janitor, but he remains tight-lipped and doesn't tell Doctor anything, but the head nurse caretaker hits him on the head with a something, knocking him unconscious. It turns out Mr. Merrick has been taken away against his will by Bites for a freak show carnival outside London while he is weak and sick, to be featured in a grotesque exhibition. Suddenly, due to the severity of his illness, he collapses, and Mr. Bites mistreats him severely, throwing him into the monkey's cage, accusing him of not cooperating intentionally. Mr. Bites' son, witnessing all this, teams up with the other deformed members of the freak show to devise a plan to sneak Merrick away under cover of night, away from Bites' watchful eyes. And then, he boards a ship and a train to return to London once again. Then, in London, at the train station, he is harassed and bullied by a few stupid kids. While covering his head with a cloth, the idiots pull the cloth off his head and charge towards him. With a voice filled with sorrow, he tells them, I am not an animal. I am just like you, a human being. But this is how I look. At that moment, the police arrive and take him away. Later, the supervisor tells the news of founding Mr. Merrick to Dr. Trevis. Dr. Trevis expresses satisfaction at finding Merrick again and is supposed to attend a theater event organized by Mrs. Kendall for Mr. John Merrick. Previously, John had shown interest in this matter in his conversation with Mrs. Kendall. John dresses up nicely for this event, and Dr. Trevis tells him, "You look magnificent." In the large theater hall where Princess Wales is also present, he enjoys watching all the theater performances. Lastly, Mrs. Kendall dedicates all these performances to Mr. Merrick on stage, and he receives applause and praise from everyone. In the final scene of the movie, the doctor tells him, "Now that you've enjoyed the theater so much, I'll take you there again," and John is very happy. However, this time he decides to sleep for the last time because he has always wished to lie down like other humans and rest his head on a pillow to sleep. Instead of sitting down to sleep, he puts the pillows aside, lies down, and goes into eternal sleep. At the moment of death, he sees an image of his mother.
Thanks for watching to the end. Folks, if you enjoy this content, make sure to like us, subscribe, and share us to your beloved ones.